I'm Alistair Levine. I am the managing director of Vine Hospitality, which is a 10-unit full-service fine dining restaurant group in the San Francisco Bay Area. I also am a partner at KitchenSync, which is a full-service back-office firm for independent restaurant groups that does payroll, bookkeeping, HR, staffing, and recruiting, both technology and service. Super passionate about sort of the intersection between technology and restaurants.
How did you first get involved in the restaurants?
Family started the restaurants. First restaurant actually was started in 1994, and that sort of naturally led to the back office side. We had a need internally. We're not able to find a service provider. In 1996, when we opened our second restaurant, at that point it was called Vine Solutions. That's the company we then merged with KitchenSync in 2021. That's sort of how we got there, is initially, getting high on our own supply, if you will, needing to be able to basically service our own needs, and quickly, the restaurant industry is small. Everybody talks to each other. It was like, there's a very clear, major missing need for great financial services within the space.
In 1996, when you were first looking at this, what was the technology like? Were you just building stuff off of fax machines?
I think we were still on Squirrel as the POS.
Okay.
I don't think Aloha had that. That wasn't out until I think later than that. I think
it was called Radiant at the time. I think there was Radiant Systems, which merged with Aloha.
Yeah, no, we were Squirrel at the time. I know that for sure. But yeah, we were on Squirrel. We were doing all like couriers, running product, running checks and invoices physically around. And then in 2003, when C2IT came out, we were one of the founding partners of that program. Immediately shifted to pulling sales vis-a-vis C2IT, pulling labor vis-a-vis C2IT, and basically have never looked back since then. In 2021, when we merged with KitchenSync, the whole reason was we wanted to control our own technology destiny. And I love the guys at C2IT, but the product's a little long in the tooth at this point, unfortunately. Still super stable, still super powerful, but there was a lot of stuff we wanted to be able to do and data we wanted to be able to pull in to really continue to drive things forward.
It's such a great story that you have a restaurant group that helped found its own technology, partner with a technology company, but then have kind of the control over the roadmap. It's truly kind of like built by operators for operators. Right?
Which is such a cliched, we deliberately don't say that because you go look at 99% of the restaurant tech firms and it's like, oh yes, it's built by operators for operators.
I know many people in the space, CEOs included, who talk about how they grew up in a restaurant,
yes,
who never worked a day in their lives in a restaurant. I will be the first to admit I've never worked in a restaurant. Sometimes I go to my buddies' restaurants and help them wash dishes. That's the extent of my restaurant experience.
Yeah, no, it's funny on that front. Look, I think, it's the classic sort of getting high on your own supply piece where it's like, we're building the tools and then using the tools daily. Some of the stuff we've launched, we launched staffing and recruiting in 21, because it was we just heard from so many of our clients and so many of our own teams, finding people is really hard. Can you help? How do you make this easier? I have one manager on the floor, he doesn't have time to screen Craigslist and resumes, right? So because we're close to the issue and we're actually living in it every day, I do think it's a big competitive advantage, clearly heavily biased, but I think it's a massive advantage because it's I can guinea pig on myself.
Yeah.
And then we have a tight group of core clients, a lot of whom have been with us for a long time, who...
It's an informal client advisory council.
Yeah, sort of, except oftentimes they're hey, can you help us solve this problem? Or we're struggling with this. We're having a lot of those informal tech conversations around what does your stack look like? What are other, we have almost 500 clients in 18 states. Everything from QSR to Michelin star fine dining. We see a huge swath of the industry, and so I get to see what most operators don't get to see because they're sort of living in that business day to day. And so they're like, hey, is this online ordering system great, or is this one, or what's going on with this POS? Are you having the same challenges? Always that dialogue. We focus as much as possible. I wouldn't say we're perfect at it, but building that community around the team, just because we think it's so important to share that knowledge.
So you've looked at tech stacks across the industry, different systems and everything. What do you think one of the biggest issues is with that tech stack in the restaurant space?
To me, it's all about the integrations and how those tech stacks work and interact with each other. You'll look at two products online. Hey, they look like they're the same online. You go to those lovely little SaaS checkboxes.
Yep.
Do you want this version, right?
Good, better, best.
Yeah, all of it, right? And it's the classic sort of tropes on that front. And it's funny because Jordan and I at 7 Shifts were just talking about this. Square integration, you can't push hours hours in and force compliance around clock in. They are changing that, so that's awesome. But you can on toast. Oftentimes I'll like find myself recommending, hey, we should use this thing this way. And we go to set it up or go to push it out, and it's like, oh, nope, doesn't work that way with this particular thing. And so a lot of the conversations I'm having with clients are like, they're like, what's the best? It depends, which is an infuriating answer, but also the accurate answer. Like, are you on Toast? Are you on Square? Are you on Spot On? Are you on Aloha? Like, what POS you're on drives a huge number of what should you consider decisions. What online ordering determines what loyalty system you might want to integrate with that. Is it third party? Are you doing catering? Like, there are so many variables. Selecting technology providers is incredibly challenging in the space because every sales team, and bless them, they should do this, is like, we make the best product. We're great. We're the perfect solution for you. I do think like some more sales engineering, a little more solutions architecture would certainly be massively beneficial, because I don't think it actually benefits restaurant tech companies to like bring a client on, churn them, bring a client on, churn them. Like, onboarding, you and I have talked about this a bunch, is a painful, expensive process. Yeah. Every restaurant tech company should be focused on making that process more seamless, more easy, more automated. But at the same time, it's still a big lift. And so if it's this constant revolving door, it's bad for everybody, and like it like poisons the well.
Yeah, on that integration side, I think that it's really interesting. So like, not all integrations are created equal. And it's so nuanced. I mean, I think about a question that we get a lot is support for nested modifiers. And if I ask 10 restaurants, hey, does your point of sale support it? Does Grubhub support it? Does your online ordering support it?
Yes.
You'll hear yeses across the board, but the reality is that that's not the case.
Of course.
All of the big three support it, but it doesn't mean your integration company does. Your integration company might support it, but Grubhub technically doesn't support nested modifiers infinitely. They only support 3 levels of it. And so once you get to all that nuance, that's what you're talking about, is you get this restaurant live, you just assume yes, and then you find that edge case. It's tough, and it's tough on the tech companies because we're at the mercy of the point of sale. Well, right? It's like, I can't do certain things on Square that we can do on Toast, and the other way around.
Operators don't necessarily know. The unknown unknowns are huge, vast, and complex in this industry, on both the restaurant tech side and the operator side. Operators oftentimes don't know the right questions to ask and don't know how to put together, for lack of a better term, like an RFQ. Here's what I need. Here's the specific detail of what I need. There's a lot of these like surface level conversations around, hey, do you reconcile third parties? Yes, cool. What does that look like? Is that daily to the order? Is that weekly to
does it integrate
level?
with my QuickBooks? Like, does it integrate with C2? Like, how do you reconcile?
There's a million different do you reconcile? How far back do you re-look and re-sweep, knowing that there's going to be refunds and disputes, and then there's so much variable just in this one little like snapshot, right? And I think the thing operators can do themselves a service with is understanding, what are you solving for? What data are you trying to get? What are you trying to make easier on your team, etc. Having that clear and actionable as possible will A, set you up for success, because you can then have a clear idea of, I've selected this vendor, did the vendor solve this problem that I clearly articulated? And B, what does success look like? We accomplished the goal, we didn't accomplish the goal, but then it becomes much easier for the tech company to be like, oh yes, I can definitely solve that problem for you, or this suite of problems for you, versus it's like, oh, I need an online ordering solution. Guess what? Toast, Square have those, all the way up to like an Olo, right? And everything in between. You can spend thousands of dollars a month or like no dollars a month, and they're all technically online ordering. Until you sort of band what that looks like and like what modules you might need. Do you need catering? Do you not? All of those things, it becomes almost an impossible task for the salesperson to be like, yep, we can do it. That's where I would always start as an operator. And I wouldn't say my company's perfect at doing this either from a restaurant tech standpoint. Like, we make mistakes and don't ask all the questions, and then we're left to pick up the pieces. We at least are like more pragmatic, I would say, than some operators, where it's like, okay, I understand, like, you may not have this feature today, will you have it tomorrow? And that's, I think, the other big element is like finding partners that are looking to grow with you. There's going to be no perfect solution every day for the most part. Find somebody who wants to work with you and drive forward with you and is receptive to your feedback.
What do you think is more important for a restaurant when making a decision, the return on the investment or the return on time?
They're both super important. I think operators underestimate the time piece, to be totally honest. I think operators massively undervalue the return on time because they have a hard time quantifying what that might look like in dollars. And oftentimes they're trying to solve a dollars problem. They're trying to do it in a brute force manner. And the truth is, operators have more issues to deal with on a daily basis than they have on their to-do list. And so knowing their to-do list is getting longer every day means you live like this because all you can see is the thing that's hung right in front of you, that's that burning fire. And so that means you're not necessarily going to make the best decisions, and you're not necessarily going to make decisions that might reduce that total burden in a sort of cognitive, clear manner. To me, like, return on time is massively undervalued. Obviously, like, the money has to make sense. Like, that kind of goes without saying. That, like, to me, that's almost a table stake. But I do think like a orientation around return on time and operators understanding how much time are they saving their team, how much time are they saving themselves, and how are they better utilizing that time they're getting back by automating a task.
I think that return on time is a more longer term view to look at your decision making. If you're saying I'll spend time, 2 hours today to save 20 hours a few weeks from now, that when you look at it that way, it gets you oriented around thinking long term so that you can spend more time working on the business rather than in the business.
100% agree. And I think, but you've got to, if you're in crisis mode all day, you cannot reorient to think that way because you're putting out fires. That's the incredibly hard balancing act that operators have. Deliveries didn't show up, workers called in sick. There is always a crisis. The more you can pull yourself back, I find actually one of the things that I was listening to a podcast recently, they suggested using your calendar as a to-do list because everything on your to-do list, you've got to find time to do. So may as well just schedule it directly on your calendar. I do think there's some value for a lot of operators in like, hey, I'm going to schedule an hour to go through this thing on Tuesday at 9 p.m. Maybe you get to it, maybe you don't. Having it physically on the calendar means you've at least started making space to like make those decisions.
I think we got them all.